Hey guys, in this spot, I figured we'd go back and have a look at the original Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy's Revenge, Freddy Krueger, from the folks over at NECA Toys. Taking the old tape measure, it's probably to no surprise that Freddy Krueger here stands exactly the same height as all the other Freddys. He stands about 7 inches tall. If you count the fedora, he stands closer to 7.5 inches tall. I thought it would be fun to go back and revisit this particular figure because, of course, NECA Toys will be releasing very soon an Ultimate Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy's Revenge Freddy Krueger. That's going to have, of course, some bells and whistles, some extra accessories, one of which being the fire that's going to be behind him, which I think is going to be really a fun way to display this figure. But I thought, you know what, let's go back. Let's go back and have a look at the original Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, a very notorious movie, probably for all the wrong reasons. In that movie, of course, Freddy Krueger tries to possess young Jesse, and hilarity ensues. One of the other aspects about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 that probably a lot of people don't get all that happy about was the fact that Freddy emerges amongst a group of teens at a barbecue, and of course extends his fingers out and says, "You are all my children now." Again, a little bit more of a comedic sort of appearance from Freddy. But one of the interesting aspects about this particular Freddy Krueger as well is that his makeup is so drastically different than not only the previous Nightmare on Elm Street, but basically all the Nightmare on Elm Streets that came afterwards. As soon as you see Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, you instantly know, you don't even have to know what movie it's from, you instantly know it's Freddy Krueger from Part 2. And one of the main reasons for that is the very, very drastic change to his face. We're going to go ahead and take the fedora off, but one thing I just want to comment on before I take the fedora off is even like the fedora has a very unique look to it. We bring in the, say, Freddy Krueger from Part 1, and you can see where this is a much more tailored, even though it's tattered, a much more tailored looking fedora. Whereas this one, I always found kind of looked like a fisherman's hat. Like if you ever saw a movie where someone would go to a small town and there was a guy fishing, it would be like this sort of hat. It's tattered, but it's a much more flatter looking fedora. Doesn't have nearly as much definition as this Freddy's hat does here. And of course, here's the comparison between the two makeups. This one is a more primitive yet still carried over face makeup design that carried over to the other Freddy Kruegers as well. Of course, the makeup became a little bit more simplified, maybe a little bit more designed, a little bit more professionally designed than the crude looking tattered flesh that he had in the original movie. But then you look at Part 2's Freddy, and again, it's very, very drastically different. So we'll go ahead and take the fedora off, which, by the way, is a very soft, once again, soft plastic. And it's got a little bit of wear, a little bit of age and stuff to it, which I like. They didn't just simply paint it brown and call it a day. They've given it a little bit extra wear to it as well, so I like that. But let's have a look at his face. Here are some of the characteristics of Freddy Krueger that make Part 2's Freddy very unique from all the other Freddys. One of which being the fact that his burns weren't so much burns as they were just like wrinkles. The burns were there, but it was much more a series of smaller burns than very large predominant burns. The eyes were also sunken in and given, hopefully the figure can do it justice, he was given more like red eyes, where Robert Englund used contacts here versus his regular eyes. So again, you could see Freddy and know right away that this was from Freddy's Revenge versus the other Nightmare on Elm Streets. He was also given a slight hooked nose. Basically, the gentleman that designed his makeup intended to have Freddy here, quotes, look like a female witch, which I guess kind of resonates here. You can kind of see where it looks a little bit more like a witch than it does like a burn victim. But like the detailing here is quite good, especially I like the darkened areas around the recessed areas of his eyes. Like you get that nice gray treatment that's added right around the eyeball area that even make his eyes look even more sunken in. This sneer, showcasing a very gruesome set of teeth, Looks quite good here also in the figure. And again, I like the fact that they've given him a sheen, which I almost feel like is not going to be the case when we get the Ultimate, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy. I feel like kind of like the Ultimate Freddy, the first Freddy, I feel like it's going to be a more matte treatment as opposed to this shinier skin. And I think the shinier skin honestly works a little bit better. One of the things that the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy also introduced was stripes on the sleeves. So up to this point, a Nightmare on Elm Street 1 Freddy didn't have the stripes on the sleeves. And a much more fitted sweater as well. Whereas, say, comparing him to the first Freddy, he had a much looser, baggier sleeve, and of course no stripes whatsoever. And there's the two figures, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 Freddy, and Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy. The glove keeps a fairly consistent look, utilizing some gold plates there as well, and of course you've got a more lighter sort of glove as opposed to a darker brown. The sweater, this sweater I think carries over to really a lot of other Freddys after this fact, where you've got the little tears and stuff like that. It's a darker tone, which I like more so. I mean, even comparing it to, let's reach off camera here, comparing it to the original, well, this is the Ultimate Freddy from the 30th anniversary release, you can see just how much better coloring this seems to have versus this. Does this not look even more faded when you compare it next to the original? Like, keeping in mind, this is the original Freddy Krueger release, not quite from the same movie, mind you, and this is NECA's re-release of this guy. You can see really very, very pale versus, what the original Freddy Krueger was. And I've already done a review of this guy, so I really won't spend a lot of time looking at him right now. But I just want to show you, I'm hoping again, and we're going to look at, I think we're going to look at Ultimate Part 3 Freddy in another video as well. So I'll talk about upgrades that they've made for the Ultimate figures leading up to the release of Ultimate Freddy here. So this guy did come with some accessories. He didn't come with a lot, but he came with ones I think are necessary for this particular Freddy. One of which, he comes with this really cool head sculpt, where it's got Freddy screaming, and of course this is where he's ripping away the flesh, exposing his brain. You've got the body, I've got the brains. Very gruesome looking brains sculpted in there on the side of Freddy's face. I do quite like this face sculpt, I have to admit. Again, you can still see the red eyes, the hooked nose, very unique characteristic traits for this particular Freddy Krueger. And much like the defaulted head, if I just get him to properly stand, you can technically put the fedora on him as well if you want to just have, a screaming Freddy. It does a pretty good job of hiding the brain. So, if you don't want the brain visible on your Freddy, you can just put the fedora over top of it, and it does a great job of hiding it. But for how old this figure is, it's not super old. But for its age, I think it still holds up well for paints. Paint looks great on it. The sculpt doesn't look dated. It still looks fantastic. The other accessory that he comes included with is the bladed fingers. This is basically now near the end where Jesse is now starting to turn into Freddy. And you can see how the blades are starting to extend out from the fingers. They're a little on the crude side because you can see that the paint has carried into the fingertips as well. But it gets the point across, and, for it to at least be included with the figure, I do appreciate that. To change out the hand, you can just pop that hand out and replace it with the bladed finger hand. Just pop that into place. It looks a little odd to see Freddy, of course, sporting this look. But again, one thing that would certainly separate displaying him versus, say, the other Freddys is not only would you have a very distinct face sculpt, but it would be fun also to swap it out. Kind of like the syringe Freddy from Part 3. Making the swap out to this hand would make this figure certainly stand out even further from the other Freddy Kruegers. Let's run through his posability now, shall we? His head is on a ball joint. Upper torso is ball jointed as well. Shoulders hinge out all the way around via a universal joint. He does have the bend in the elbow, which also allows the lower arm to rotate. And the hand, by the nature of the way that they're pegged in, rotate all the way around, as well as he has a hinge back and forth. Then you get, unfortunately, to the problem, and all the more reason why you would want to get the Ultimate, the lower half of Freddy. Well painted and sculpted nicely, I will give it that. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any sort of posability whatsoever. You have your ball joint on the torso that we've looked at, and then you've also got the same similar peg for the boots here as what we got with the hands. But other than that, he is staction. In other words, he is sculpted basically from the head, from the waist down to the ankles. He's pre-posed. There's absolutely nothing you can do with it. Now that may be fine if you don't mind displaying the figure such as this. Some people, of course, I kind of like the fact that you can get superposable legs, because you can do a little bit more with the Freddy. Even if I just really outright plan on displaying him with that kind of defaulted, you know, gunslinger stance that Freddy Krueger was so known for having, I kind of still like the idea that periodically, for example, I can pick up an Ultimate Freddy Krueger and I'd be able to do this. Even if I have absolutely no intentions to do anything drastic in the way of posing him, I do like the fact that give me at least the posability, and if I decide not to do anything with it, at least it's still there. So that's one of the aspects, one of the good things about getting the Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 is that he's going to have the posability on the lower legs. If that doesn't bother you at all, you could theoretically still keep this figure, because I have a sneaking suspicion that this figure may still have a better head sculpt and better paint application than the Ultimate. I'm only basing that really on the original Ultimate Freddy Krueger, the 30th anniversary release one, but I do feel like this has some dark, rich colors. I dare almost say that may be forfeited when it comes to the Ultimate release, but we will only need to know, we will only need to find out by, when that Freddy gets eventually released. But still a decent looking figure. He has, again, all the necessary accessories. I still quite like Freddy's Revenge Freddy. I do feel bad where I feel like I'm sort of ripping on the Ultimate line. I know I did that with the Friday the 13th Ultimate Jasons, and now just recently having a look at the Ultimate 30th Anniversary Freddy Krueger. Part of me does feel like, while they've improved aspects of the Ultimate figures, I find like the paint quality on them still isn't as good as the originals. Not being able to really compare this original Freddy to now the Ultimate Jason, the Ultimate Freddy release until eventually that figure gets released, I can't really do comparisons just yet, but I thought it would be fun to go back and have a look at the original Freddy Krueger before the Ultimate Part 2 Freddy gets released. As again it goes for this particular figure, he does have all the accessories that I would hope that this figure has, or would have. The Ultimate Freddy is going to, of course, have the fire behind him, which I think is going to be a nice added touch. But it is going to be interesting to see if the paint is going to be as good as this figure, because really, shy of the fact that the lower legs don't have the posability, I still think this figure doesn't show its age at all. It's got a good head sculpt. It's got, again, a good level of accessories. And I just think overall the paint is really good on this figure. So if you do have this particular figure, it'll be interesting to see how he stacks up versus the Ultimate when he eventually gets released. Today, though, we were going back and we were revisiting the original. This was the one before the Ultimate release. This was the original Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, Freddy Krueger. If you guys like this video, certainly hit it with a like down below. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe to this channel, what are you waiting for? Some demon to possess your body? Don't wait. Subscribe down below, and you'll never miss a beat when it comes to future videos. And hey, if also Freddy Krueger is your thing and you want to check out more videos like this, I've got a whole playlist designated specifically to Freddy Krueger. So as always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do. I'll see you next time.